The twin suns of Zerath Prime rose above the shining towers of the Intergalactic Academy, spreading golden light across the crystal domes. Ships from hundreds of planets floated around the Academy's orbit, carrying students from every corner of the galaxy. Inside the halls, voices of different tones and languages mixed together like music from 1,000 worlds. Among them walked Kale, quiet and focused, holding a small datapad. He was not tall, not glowing, not covered in scales or fur like most of the others. His skin was plain and his eyes a soft gray. In a place filled with creatures of bright colors and strange shapes, Kale looked ordinary. Yet everyone who had ever met him knew he was far from that. Kale had arrived 2 years ago, brought by a trader ship from a forgotten sector of space. No one knew his home planet, and his file only said origin unknown. At first, others thought he was just another simple species from a minor world. But that idea did not last long. In every class, tactics, mechanics, survival, and even galactic diplomacy, Kale excelled. His answers were not always the most advanced, but they worked, and they worked fast. When others hesitated, he acted. When they copied data from their implants, Kale simply thought, tested, failed, and tried again until he succeeded. At first, the alien students laughed. The tall, blue-skinned Valari mocked his lack of bioarmor. The insectoid Zrix clicked their mandibles in amusement, calling him soft-skinned. But slowly the laughter faded, because Kale kept winning. The student who did not belong instructors noticed him early on. Professor Iltara, a wise, four-eyed being who taught strategy, often watched Kale from the corner of her vision. She could not read his mind. His brain produced strange waves that blocked telepathic access. One day, after a training exercise, she called him aside. "You think too fast for someone of your biology," she said carefully. Kale only smiled. "Maybe thinking is just practice, Professor." "I've had a lot of it," her eyes narrowed. "No enhancements, no implants, no telepathy. And yet you beat students from 7 different worlds." How Kale shrugged. "I just don't like losing." That simple answer spread through the academy like a quiet storm. Soon, everyone knew the human-like student who learned faster than machines, fought harder than soldiers, and never seemed to tire. The whisper of curiosity, the academy's younger students admired him. They followed him through corridors, asking questions about his homeworld. Kale always gave vague answers. "It was green," he said once. "We had oceans, and stars that we dreamed about reaching." That answer sparked more curiosity. No record of his planet existed in any galactic archive. The name Earth was only found in old myths, a lost world that vanished after a great collapse hundreds of years ago. But no one believed those stories. Still, whispers began to grow. "Maybe he's from the lost world." "Impossible. That species destroyed itself." "But what if one survived?" Kale ignored the talk. He preferred the quiet of the library, where he spent long hours studying alien history and technology. He read about civilizations that lasted 1,000,000 years, about species that mastered light, time, and gravity. Yet what amazed him most was how fragile they all seemed, powerful but cautious, intelligent but careful. Humans, he thought, were never careful. They reached too far, burned too bright. That was both their curse and their gift. The first challenge one morning during combat class, the instructor announced a new test, a full simulation in the gravity chamber, a zero-gravity field where cadets had to retrieve a glowing sphere before anyone else. Kale's opponent was Thrixa, a four-armed reptilian from the world of Core, twice his size, covered in natural armor, and gifted with enhanced reflexes. The crowd gathered around, excited to watch the quiet boy lose for once. The signal sounded. Thrixa launched forward, claws slicing through the air. Kale twisted aside, narrowly avoiding a hit. He didn't have the strength or speed to match his opponent, but he didn't need to. He studied movement, timing, and patterns. He let Thrixa attack again and again, dodging just enough to stay alive. The crowd began to cheer for the alien, expecting a quick victory. But Kale used the floating debris in the chamber, broken drones, loose panels, to his advantage. He kicked one piece to distract Thrixa, then used another as a springboard, spinning through the air. Before anyone realized it, he grabbed the glowing sphere and landed softly. The arena fell silent. Thrixa stared, breathing hard. That was not strength. That was trickery. Kale handed him the sphere calmly. "Sometimes surviving is trickery," he said. then walked away. The students didn't laugh anymore. The instructors take notice after the match. The academy's leaders met privately. Professor Iltara spoke first. He learns too fast. His body adapts without technology. His mind blocks telepathy. I have never seen such control in a baseline life form. The headmaster, Vorin, adjusted his silver robe. Are you suggesting he's something unnatural? No, Iltara replied. I'm suggesting he's something forgotten. They decided to study him quietly under the guise of a medical update. Kyle agreed without suspicion. He was used to tests. The academy always seemed fascinated by his biology. He never thought they might be searching for something deeper. The small circle of friends. Despite his mystery, Kale was not alone. He had a few friends who truly accepted him. There was Ree, a small bird-like student from the icy moon of Asha, who admired Kale's calmness. And Loran, a nervous aquatic being who carried a translator sphere that floated beside him. They often met in the cafeteria, where food from dozens of worlds was served. Glowing cubes, steam clouds, and floating liquids. Kale, however, always ate the same thing, simple nutrient bars, or sometimes cooked grains he prepared himself. Ree chirped once, curious. Why do you eat that strange dry food? Kale smiled. It's what we used to eat at home. Keeps me grounded. Your world must be very simple, Loran said, half teasing. Kyle looked out the window at the stars. Not simple, he said softly, just human. Neither of them understood what that word meant, but they felt the weight of it, the night of reflection. That night, Kale sat alone in the dorm garden, a place filled with glowing trees and floating stones. He gazed at the stars, trying to remember his mother's voice, the feel of rain, the smell of the ocean. So much of his memory was foggy. He had been young when the colony ship crashed. The others didn't survive. He remembered only one thing clearly, a message his father left before the end. Never forget what you are, Kale. We are the ones who rise again. He didn't know then what it meant, but in this alien academy, surrounded by beings from across the galaxy, he began to understand. Humans had always been outnumbered, outmatched, yet they always stood back up. That was their strength, the turning point. The next day, an announcement shook the academy. The Void trials were coming, a survival simulation in real space, not virtual reality. It was a dangerous test where students were sent to an uncharted moon to work as a team under pressure. Many failed. Some even quit afterward. Kale's name appeared on the list. As he looked at the roster, he saw Thrixa's name too, his old opponent. Thrixa glanced at him and gave a cold smile. I'll be sure you don't walk out this time, soft skin. Kyle only nodded. We'll see. For the first time, even his friends looked worried. Ree whispered, You don't have a weapon, Kyle. You'll be at a disadvantage. Kyle smiled calmly. That depends on how you define a weapon. The quiet before the storm as the students prepared for the Void trials, tension filled the academy. Whispers of Kyle's strange origins grew louder. Some said he was a clone, others that he came from a lost war race. But no one knew the truth, not even Kale himself. When he walked through the corridors, some students moved aside, not out of fear, but out of uncertainty. There was something in his eyes, determination, maybe defiance, that no one could quite understand. Professor Iltara watched from above as Kale entered the shuttle bay. There is something ancient about that boy, she murmured. Something that does not die. The headmaster looked at her. You think he's one of them? Iltara nodded slowly. If he is, then the galaxy is not ready for what comes next. As the launch countdown began, Kale looked out the window one last time at the twin suns of GalacticPrime. He whispered to himself, Let's see if the universe still remembers what humans can do. The engines roared, and the shuttle lifted into the sky. The Void trials had begun. The Void trials were not just another training mission. They were the most difficult test any cadet of the Zerath Intergalactic Academy could face. Every year, students were sent to an unknown moon where they had to survive for 7 days, using only their intelligence, teamwork, and limited supplies. The goal was simple: reach the extraction point before time ran out. But everyone knew that simple goals were often the hardest to achieve. Kale stood with his small team in the shuttle bay, fastening his light armor. The air shimmered with energy as ships prepared for departure. Around him, other cadets whispered and exchanged nervous glances. Some looked confident. Others tried to hide their fear. Kale just breathed slowly, calm and focused. His team consisted of 4 members. Thrixa, the tall reptilian warrior who had once challenged him. Ree, the small bird-like friend who trusted him completely. Loran, the aquatic thinker who often relied on logic more than instinct. And Kale himself, the quiet one, the outsider, the mystery. They were assigned to Sector 9, an area marked as unstable. It meant no one knew what kind of terrain or conditions they would face. Before the shuttle doors closed, Professor Iltara appeared on the viewing deck. Her calm voice echoed through the speakers. Remember, cadets, intelligence, unity, and courage are your greatest tools. The void does not forgive pride. Kyle looked up and gave a small nod. He knew she was watching him closely. The descent. The shuttle broke through the thin clouds of the moon. Outside the window, the world looked dark and endless. Sharp mountains cut across the horizon, and purple fog rolled through deep valleys. Strange flashes of light glimmered far below, like storms trapped beneath the surface. As the ship landed, the metallic floor vibrated under their boots. Coordinates locked. Communication limited. Extraction in 7 days, the pilot's voice said before the ramp opened. Cold wind rushed in. Kale stepped out first, scanning the area. The air tasted metallic, and gravity was slightly heavier than on Zerath Prime. The sun, if it could be called that, was dim and weak. Thrixa grumbled, adjusting his armor. Great, another broken rock. Let's just find the beacon and finish this. Kale looked at the terrain map on his datapad. The extraction point is 50 kilometers northeast. But the map is incomplete. We'll have to navigate manually. Ree spread her small wings, hovering beside him. We'll manage, right? Kale smiled softly. We always do. First steps into the unknown. The group began their journey across the gray landscape. The ground was uneven, filled with glass-like stones that cracked under their feet. Loran's translator sphere floated beside him, blinking as it recorded the environment. After a few hours, they reached a narrow canyon. Strange humming sounds echoed from within, like voices carried by the wind. Ree looked nervous. That sound. Is it alive? Kale crouched down, studying the ground. Resonance. The rocks vibrate when wind passes through them. It's not alive, and just physics. Thrixa gave a small laugh. So the soft skin knows something about rocks, too. Kyle didn't reply. He simply walked forward. Every decision he made was measured, calm, and precise. His instincts told him that observation was the key to survival. Not speed, not power. When they camped that night, Kyle built a simple shelter using their limited supplies. The others were surprised at how easily he adapted to the harsh environment. While Loran calculated resource use and Thrixa sharpened his tools, Kyle quietly prepared a heat source using friction and metal shards. You've done this before, Ree said softly, watching the small fire glow. Kyle smiled. Something like this, yes. Loran tilted his head. Your world must have been difficult. Kyle looked into the fire. It taught us to work with what we have, not what we wish we had. None of them spoke after that. The quiet hum of the alien night surrounded them. The unexpected storm on the second day, a dark cloud spread across the horizon. The sky turned violet and electric winds began to rise. The Academy had warned them about possible weather shifts, but no one expected it to arrive so suddenly. Magnetic storm incoming, Loran shouted, watching his scanner blink red. Kale acted instantly. Find cover now. They ran toward a cluster of rocks. The storm struck moments later. Waves of bright energy rolled through the air, pulling metal objects upward. The ground shook and a high-pitched sound filled their helmets. Ree nearly lost balance, her wings catching the wind. Kyle reached out and grabbed her arm, pulling her behind a rock. Stay low, he shouted over the storm. For hours, the world glowed with strange colors. The rocks vibrated and their equipment flickered. Kale used his body to shield Ree from flying debris. Thrixa and Loran fought to keep their shelter intact. When the storm finally ended, everything was silent again. The ground was scorched and their communication device had stopped working. Thrixa groaned. We've lost our signal. We're cut off. Kyle stood, brushing dust from his suit. Then we move without it. The Academy expects us to adapt. He looked up at the sky where faint lightning still flashed in the distance. There was a strange calmness in his eyes, the same kind seen in old explorers who had crossed dangerous oceans back on Earth. The rift 2 more days passed. The group made steady progress until they reached a deep ravine, too wide to jump and too deep to climb. The extraction point was on the other side. We'll have to go around, Loran suggested. That could take days, Thrixa argued. We'll miss the extraction. Kyle studied the cliff walls. No, we can cross. He pointed to several sharp rocks forming a natural arch. If we build a bridge using our gear, we can make it across safely. Thrixa frowned. That's madness. Not madness, Kale replied, already moving. Just physics again. They began working together. Thrixa providing strength, Loran calculating angles, Ree helping to balance the materials while flying. Kyle guided them step by step, using small tricks that seemed too clever for someone without cyber enhancements. When the bridge was complete, Kyle crossed first, testing every step. It held, see? He said, looking back. No madness and only trust. For the first time, Thrixa smiled. Maybe you're not as soft as you look. The lost beacon by the 6th day, exhaustion began to show. Supplies were low and everyone was tired. But when they finally reached the coordinates of the extraction point, there was nothing there. No beacon, no signal, only a broken tower buried in dust. Loran scanned it twice. It's gone. The beacon is destroyed. We can't send our signal. Silence filled the air. Ree looked frightened. Then we're stuck? Kyle knelt beside the broken tower, examining its remains. He noticed something unusual. The power core was still intact, only disconnected. He smiled faintly. Not stuck, just delayed. Working carefully, Kale began repairing the old system using spare parts from his own equipment. The others watched as he used tools in ways they had never seen, twisting wires, using static energy from the storm, even converting heat into charge. After hours of work, the beacon's light flickered back to life. A bright blue beam shot into the sky. Ree gasped. You did it! Kyle nodded. We all did. I just remembered how my people used to fix things when everything else failed. Thrixa tilted his head. Your people? They must have been great engineers. Kale smiled quietly. We were many things, sometimes too many. The rescue and the silence on the 7th day, a rescue ship appeared in the sky. The cadets cheered as it landed near them. The pilot saluted. Team 9, you've completed the trial successfully. When they returned to the academy, the halls buzzed with excitement. Kale's team had not only survived, they had repaired a destroyed beacon and signaled extraction early. It was unheard of. But behind the applause, whispers began again. How did he fix the beacon without alien tech? His body should not survive a magnetic storm that strong. No species adapts like that. The instructors exchanged uneasy looks. The medical scans taken after the trial showed something unexpected. Kale's cells had repaired themselves at a speed far beyond any known species. Professor Iltara stared at the data in silence. It cannot be, she whispered. This pattern, it matches ancient human records, the headmaster frowned. Humans, that's impossible. They're myths. Iltara looked toward the observation window where Kale stood outside with his team laughing for the first time in months. Then tell me, she said softly, why does a myth walk among us? The quiet before revelation. That night, Kale sat once again in the academy garden, looking at the stars. He held a small stone he had brought from the moon, a reminder of the trial. Ree and Loran joined him. You saved us, Kale, Ree said warmly. You always know what to do. Kale shook his head. No one always knows. We just keep trying. That's what makes us who we are. When they left, Kale stayed alone for a while. He looked at the distant sky, where the stars shimmered like tiny fires. Somewhere out there he felt a pull, a memory of home, of Earth. He whispered to the night, maybe it's time they knew who we really are. The academy buzzed with whispers after the void trials. Every corridor, every cafeteria table, and every training hall echoed with one name. Kale, the boy who had fixed the broken beacon. The boy who had survived a magnetic storm. The boy who never gave up. But behind the applause and admiration there was something else. Curiosity mixed with fear. He was different. Too different. His speed, his endurance, his ability to heal faster than anyone else. It all made people question who, or what, he really was. The instructors said nothing, but they watched. The council ordered new tests hidden behind routine medical evaluations. Kyle didn't complain. He had nothing to hide, or so he thought. The scans begin inside the medical research wing. White lights glowed softly across glass walls. Kale sat on a metallic chair as a scanner hovered above him. Dr. Mira Zeth, the lead biologist, studied her monitor with sharp golden eyes. "This will only take a moment," she said kindly. "We're updating our health records." Kale nodded, relaxed. He trusted her. She had always treated him with respect. The machine hummed quietly, sending waves of light across his skin. Data filled the screens: heart rate, cell regeneration, bone density. Everything looked normal at first. Then the readings began to shift. Mira frowned. "That can't be right." She adjusted the settings, scanning again. The data repeated, same results, same impossible numbers. Kale's cells regenerated almost 10 times faster than a normal being's. His DNA didn't match any known species in the galactic database. Dr. Mira saved the file and locked it under restricted access. "Thank you, Kale," she said, her voice calm but distant. "You may go." Kale smiled politely. "Did everything look fine?" "Perfectly fine," she lied. When he left, Mira called Professor Iltara immediately. "You need to see this. Right now." The hidden discovery within an hour. The top scientists and council members gathered in a sealed conference room. The lights dimmed as Mira projected Kale's DNA sequence. The screen filled with spiraling patterns of light. "This," she said, pointing, "is not like anything we've seen in centuries." Iltara leaned forward. "Explain." "There are genetic markers here, patterns identical to those recorded in ancient Terran archives." "Terran?" the headmaster repeated slowly. "You mean Earth?" Mira nodded. "If the records are true, this boy carries human DNA." The room went silent. For a moment, even the air seemed to stop moving. "Impossible," said one of the counselors. "Humans are extinct. The last colony vanished hundreds of years ago." Iltara looked thoughtful. "And yet one may stand in our academy." The quiet before the storm that evening. Kale walked through the academy courtyard. The twin suns were setting, painting the sky with orange light. Ree fluttered down beside him, cheerful as always. "You've become famous again," she chirped. "Everyone's talking about you." Kyle laughed softly. "They'll forget by tomorrow." But Ree shook her head. "No, this time it's different. They say you might be from a forgotten race." Kale paused. "A race?" "Something called human," she said, pronouncing the word strangely. "Do you know it?" Kyle's heart skipped a beat. That word, human, echoed in his mind like a distant memory. He tried to recall stories from his father, the ones told under the dim light of their crashed ship. Humans never give up. "Humans always rebuild." He forced a smile. "No," he said quietly. "Never heard of it." Ree didn't notice his tone. She kept talking, her voice full of excitement. Kyle only half listened, his thoughts elsewhere, on the truth he had long avoided. A meeting with the council. The next morning, Kyle received a summons. He was to report to the Central Hall of Inquiry. Few students were ever called there. When he arrived, the large doors opened silently. Inside, the council members sat in a half-circle. Their faces were calm but serious. Headmaster Voren spoke first. "Kyle, please sit." He obeyed, folding his hands calmly on the table. "We've been reviewing your test results," Voren continued. "There are irregularities." Kale tilted his head slightly. "Irregularities?" "Your DNA does not match any known registered species," Iltara said gently. "Would you like to tell us where you are truly from?" Kale hesitated. He had no reason to lie, but he had no proof either. "I told you before. I don't know the name. My colony ship crashed when I was young." Mira looked at him carefully. "Do you remember anything about your people? Anything at all?" Kyle closed his eyes. A memory surfaced in his father's voice. "We are the ones who rise again." "Yes," he said softly. "We were survivors." Voren exchanged glances with the others. "Survivors," he repeated. "That would fit the records." Kale looked up. "What records?" Iltara pressed a key on her console. A hologram appeared above the table, old, grainy, and filled with static. It showed a blue planet surrounded by light. "This," she said, is Earth, home of the human race. Kyle stared, his breath catching. Earth? For a long moment no one spoke. Are you saying, Kyle asked slowly, that I am human? Mira nodded. All evidence points to that conclusion. The weight of truth. Kyle sat in silence. The word human echoed in his mind again and again. He remembered the strange stories told by other students, of ancient humans who had built machines that touched the stars, who fought wars but also dreamed of peace. He felt something stir inside him, pride mixed with sadness. Why didn't anyone tell me? He finally asked. Because we did not know, Iltara said. Your people vanished long ago. Many believed they destroyed themselves. Others thought they became something new. Kale looked at the hologram again. Maybe we did both, Vorin stood. We must decide what to do. The presence of a human among us will cause panic. Some will fear you. Others will want to study you. Kyle met his eyes. I didn't ask to be feared or studied. I only came here to learn. Iltara spoke quietly. And learn you have. But you must understand. The galaxy remembers humans as a dangerous, unpredictable species. Some called them heroes. Others called them destroyers. Kyle smiled faintly. Maybe we were both. But we also had hearts. We helped when we could. We dreamed big. His calmness surprised the council. He didn't argue or beg. He simply accepted the truth. The Academy reacts by the next day the news had spread. No one knew how, but secrets rarely stayed hidden at the Academy. When Kale walked through the halls, everyone turned to stare. Some moved aside, whispering. Others looked at him with awe. That's him, someone said. The human. I thought they were just stories. Thrixa approached him during lunch. So it's true, he said quietly. You're from the Lost World. Kyle nodded once. Seems so. Thrixa studied him for a moment, then gave a short nod. Then maybe the stories were right. Your kind never stops surprising us. Ree, on the other hand, looked worried. Are you in danger now? Kyle smiled gently. Not yet. But I might be soon. Whispers of the past. That night, Kale visited the library, the quietest place in the Academy. The robotic librarian gave him restricted access to historical files. He searched for every mention of Earth, humans, and their disappearance. He read until his eyes hurt. He saw old records, of cities shining under blue skies, of people exploring the stars, of wars that nearly ended everything. But he also saw stories of kindness, invention, and hope. Humans had destroyed much, but they had also created wonders no one else dared imagine. Kyle closed the last file and leaned back. So that's what we were, he whispered. Not perfect, but never finished. He smiled slightly. And I'm still here, so maybe we're not gone. The silent choice days passed. The council still debated what to do. Some wanted Kale to remain at the Academy. Others wanted to send him away for safety. But Kale continued his routine as if nothing had changed. He trained. He studied. He helped others, yet everywhere he went silence followed, a silence heavy with respect, confusion, and something like fear. One evening, Professor Iltara found him in the training hall, practicing hand-to-hand defense. You should rest, she said gently. Kale smiled. Resting never helped anyone become stronger. She watched him for a moment. You carry your ancestors' fire, she said. And maybe that's what scares them. You remind us of what humanity once was, and what it could still become. Kale looked at her. Then maybe it's time the galaxy remembered not what humans destroyed, but what they dreamed of. The beginning of change. That night, the Academy sky shimmered with stars. Kyle stood on the balcony staring at the endless void. Somewhere out there was his home, or what was left of it. He made a silent promise. I'll show them who we truly are, he whispered. Not myths, not monsters, just human. Behind him, the Academy lights dimmed. The world had changed forever, and for the first time in centuries, the word human meant hope again. Days turned into weeks after Kale's secret was revealed. Everyone at the Zareth Intergalactic Academy now knew the truth. The quiet student who had once been a mystery was not from some unknown minor race. He was human, a member of a species long believed extinct. The word human spread through the galaxy faster than light. Some were amazed. Some were afraid. Others doubted it was true. And through it all, Kale stayed calm. Not proud, not angry, just thoughtful. He didn't fully understand what being human meant yet. but he could feel the weight of it every time someone looked at him differently. The Watcher's Kale's days changed after that. He was no longer just a student. He had become a symbol. Wherever he went, eyes followed him. In the cafeteria, whispers trailed behind him. That's him, the last human. Do you think he's dangerous? I heard humans could destroy planets. Kale heard the rumors but never answered them. He simply smiled politely, took his tray, and sat alone. Ree and Loran still joined him when they could, but even they felt the tension around him. It was as if the whole academy was holding its breath. At night, Kale sometimes sat on the balcony of his dorm, looking up at the twin suns. He wondered what his ancestors would think if they saw this, their only descendant living among hundreds of alien species, studying peace while surrounded by fear. He sighed quietly. So this is what it means to carry a name, he whispered to himself. The Council's dilemma. Meanwhile, the Academy Council met almost every night to discuss Kale's future. The topic divided them. Headmaster Voran believed Kale should be protected. He is proof that humanity survived, he said firmly. We cannot treat him like a lab subject, others disagreed. We don't know what he's capable of, argued Counselor Dren. The ancient archives describe humans as powerful, unpredictable, and dangerous. We cannot risk another catastrophe. Professor Iltara remained quiet during most meetings. She had seen Kale's heart, his patience, his humility, and his sense of honor. She finally spoke one evening, her voice calm but steady. If Kale is truly human, then perhaps humanity was never the danger, only misunderstood. He deserves to stay. After much debate, the council agreed on one thing. Kale would continue his studies, but his movements would be monitored for now. Kale accepted this news without complaint. If it helps them feel safe, he said to Iltara, then I don't mind. Humans used to earn trust the hard way. A friend in the storm one evening, Kale was walking through the garden when he found Ree waiting for him. Her feathers shimmered under the moonlight. Kale, she said softly, I don't like how they're treating you. It's not fair, Kale smiled. It's not unfair either. They're scared of the unknown. I might feel the same in their place. But you've saved lives. You fixed the beacon. You helped everyone. Ree protested, flapping her small wings. Kale looked up at the stars. Sometimes, even when you do good things, people still need time to trust. It's part of learning who they are and who you are. Ree sighed, but she understood. You're too calm, Kale. If it were me, I'd shout until they listened. Kale chuckled softly. That's what makes you you, and me human. They both laughed quietly under the glowing trees. And for a moment the world didn't feel so heavy. The arrival of the delegation. A few days later, a large ship arrived at the Academy. It carried delegates from the Galactic Council, leaders from multiple civilizations. They had come to see Kale with their own eyes. The Academy prepared for their visit with great care. Flags from different worlds waved across the plaza, and students lined the halls to watch the event. When the delegation entered, silence fell. The representatives wore shining robes and carried symbols of their worlds. In the center was Archon Reltar, one of the highest-ranking counselors in the galaxy. Kyle was called to the main hall. As he entered, whispers echoed through the crowd. He stood tall and calm, his gray eyes steady. Archon Reltar studied him closely. So you are the human. Kyle nodded politely. Yes, sir. The Archon's expression was unreadable. Do you understand what your existence means, young one? Kale hesitated. It means humanity isn't gone. Maybe we still have something to give. Reltar's eyes narrowed slightly. Or something to take. History remembers your kind as both creators and destroyers. Kale met his gaze. Then I'll do my best to remind them of the first part. The Archon was silent for a long moment, then gave a slow nod. We shall see. The spark of division. The visit changed everything. News of Kale's existence spread even further. Across the galaxy, people began debating. Should humanity return? Should this lone survivor be allowed to represent a species that once shook the stars? Messages poured into the Academy. Some worlds sent gifts and letters of support. Others sent warnings. One message read, Do not trust the human. History repeats itself. Another said, If one survived, more might come. Prepare. Kyle read some of these messages quietly, never showing anger. But inside, he felt a strange ache, a longing to prove them wrong, to show that humanity could be more than its past mistakes. Ree noticed the change in him. "You're thinking too much again," she said one morning. He smiled faintly. "Thinking is what my kind does best and worst." The unexpected threat one evening, alarms rang across the academy. The red lights flashed through every corridor. "Unidentified ships approaching," the automated voice announced. Students rushed to the shelters while instructors tried to contact the defense systems. Kyle and his friends ran to the control room where Professor Iltara was monitoring the situation. "What's happening?" Kyle asked. "A small fleet. Unidentified signature," she said quickly. "They're demanding we hand over the human student," he gasped. "They came for you?" Kale frowned. "Who are they?" Iltara looked grim. "A splinter group from the Arath Dominion. They believe the human race should never return. They think you are a threat to galactic peace." Kale stood silently for a moment. "If they want me, I'll go." "No," Ree cried. "You can't." Iltara shook her head. "You're under the Academy's protection, Kale. You're not leaving." Kale looked at the screens showing the enemy ships outside. "Then we need to protect everyone here. Let me help." The human instinct. Despite Iltara's protest, Kyle joined the Academy's defense team. He studied the tactical map and quickly saw something others missed. The enemy ships were not here for a full battle. They were trying to scare them, to make the Academy surrender without a fight. "They're using a bluff," Kale said. "Their formation is too thin. If we redirect the satellite shields, we can hold them long enough for reinforcements." The officers hesitated. He was just a student after all. But when Iltara nodded, they listened. Kale coordinated the moves calmly and efficiently. His human intuition, that mix of logic and instinct, guided him perfectly. The defense system activated, forming a glowing barrier around the Academy. The enemy ships fired a few harmless blasts, then retreated. The crisis ended without a single casualty. The moment of respect, when the alarm finally stopped, everyone looked at Kale. The same cadets who once whispered behind his back now stared in quiet admiration. Headmaster Voran approached him. "You saved this academy," he said, voice filled with pride. Kale shook his head. "I just noticed what others didn't, that's all." Reed chirped happily. "That's what makes you human, Kale, seeing things no one else can." For the first time, even Archon Reltar smiled slightly. "Perhaps the galaxy still has something to learn from your kind." The weight of the name that night, Kale stood again on the Academy's balcony. The stars were bright and endless. He thought about everything, the fear, the curiosity, the hope. Being human wasn't just about blood or DNA. It was about choices, courage, and heart. Professor Iltara joined him quietly. "You've carried this truth well," she said. Kale smiled. "It's heavy sometimes, but it feels right. Maybe this is what my people meant. That strength isn't in power, it's in standing when no one else will." She nodded. "The galaxy is watching you now, Kale. What you do next will shape how they remember humanity." He looked at the stars again. "Then I'll give them something worth remembering." The dawn of change the next morning, the Academy returned to calm. But something had changed, not in Kale, but in everyone around him. The fear had softened into respect. Students greeted him with smiles instead of whispers. Even Thrixa, the proud reptilian warrior, walked up and said, "You fight with your mind and your heart." "I can respect that," Kyle simply nodded. "Thank you." Word spread beyond the Academy. Across distant worlds, people began to speak of the human not as a danger, but as a symbol, a reminder that courage, kindness, and hope could come from even the most forgotten places. And in the quiet of his room, Kale opened his datapad and began writing. Not a report, not a letter, but something new, a record of what it meant to be human. He titled it, "The Spirit That Never Fades." The sun rose over Zirath Prime, spreading soft light across the towers of the Intergalactic Academy. The air felt calm for the first time in many weeks. Students returned to their routines, ships came and went, and the world continued to spin. But something had changed, not just in the Academy, but in every heart that had heard the story of the human student who saved them. Kyle, once a quiet mystery, was now known across the galaxy as the last of Earth's children. The aftermath of the attack, after the Orath ships had retreated, life slowly returned to normal, though the Academy was never truly the same again. Where there had once been silence and suspicion, there was now curiosity and respect. Some of the alien students approached Kyle with questions. Others simply wanted to talk to him, to hear about his strange homeworld that no longer existed. Kyle didn't have much to tell. His memories were fragments, blue skies, green oceans, laughter in the distance. But those fragments were enough to make the others dream. Ree often teased him. "You've become a hero, Kyle," she chirped. Kyle smiled softly. Heroes are just people who do what they can. Even Thrixa, the once arrogant warrior, started training beside him. "If humans were truly like you," Thrixa said one day, "then maybe your kind deserves a place in this galaxy again." Kyle only nodded. "We never wanted to rule the stars. We just wanted to reach them." The voice of the galaxy news of Kyle's courage reached far beyond the Academy. Within months, messages arrived from across the sectors. Scholars, historians, and leaders who wanted to meet him. One message came from the Galactic Cultural Council. They wanted Kale to speak at their upcoming assembly, an event broadcast to thousands of worlds. When Headmaster Vorin told him, Kale was surprised. "Me? What could I possibly say to the whole galaxy?" Vorin smiled kindly. "Whatever comes from your heart. Sometimes truth needs no decoration," Kyle agreed. He didn't feel ready, but he knew he couldn't hide forever. Humanity had been silent for centuries. Now it was time to speak again. Preparing for the speech, the days before the assembly were busy. Kale practiced in empty halls while Ree and Loran helped him with translations. He wasn't nervous about speaking. He was nervous about representing all of humanity, a people gone for generations, whose image had been mixed with myths and fear. At night, he often sat by the Academy's great window, looking at the endless stars. He thought of his father's last words on that doomed colony ship. "Never forget what you are, Kale. We rise again," he whispered to the stars. "I hope I can make you proud." The Assembly of Worlds, the day of the assembly, arrived. The grand hall of the Galactic Cultural Council was vast, filled with delegates from hundreds of civilizations. Lights shimmered across the ceiling like floating constellations. As Kyle walked onto the stage, a hush fell over the crowd. Cameras turned toward him. His image appeared on giant screens across distant planets. Archon Reltar, who had once doubted him, introduced him formally. "Today, we welcome a voice long lost to time. The last known human, Kale of Earth." Applause echoed softly, mixed with curiosity. Kale took a deep breath and began. Kale's words. "My name is Kale," he said. "I come from a world that no longer exists, a blue planet called Earth. My people reached the stars long ago, but we were not perfect. We made mistakes. We fought, we stumbled, and we fell, but we also dreamed, we built, we learned. We believed that even in darkness, light could be found, not from power, but from kindness, courage, and hope." The audience listened in complete silence. Kale continued, his voice steady but full of emotion. "I don't stand here as a hero. I stand here as a reminder that no matter how far we fall, we can rise again. That's what it means to be human. And maybe it's what it means to be alive, no matter your species." When he finished, there was silence. Then slowly, applause began. Soft at first, then louder, until the hall thundered with sound. For the first time, the galaxy applauded not out of fear or curiosity, but out of respect. The legacy begins after the assembly. Kale's speech spread across the network of worlds. People replayed it, quoted it, and discussed it. Many alien historians called it the dawn of renewal. Students in other academies began studying human history again, not as a warning but as inspiration. The Galactic Council officially recognized Earth's heritage as a symbol of endurance and creativity. They even planned a mission to explore the ruins of old human colonies, not to conquer them but to preserve them. Kale, however, didn't care about fame. He returned quietly to the academy and continued his studies. But everywhere he went, people greeted him with warmth. When younger students saw him, they didn't whisper dangerous anymore. They said, "That's the human who brought hope back." The discovery months later, while studying in the library, Kyle came across an old signal file, one the Academy systems had recently intercepted. It was faint, old, and incomplete. The data tag read, "Origin Earth Sector." Heart-pounding, Kyle called Professor Iltara. Together they cleaned the signal and amplified it. Through static and distortion, a voice spoke, soft, human, and old. To whoever hears this, Earth is gone, but we endure. Humanity lives among the stars. We are not finished. Kale's hands trembled slightly. It's real, he whispered. Iltara looked at him, eyes shining. It seems your people were not as lost as we thought. The message ended with coordinates, somewhere deep in uncharted space. Kale stared at the screen. They're out there, he said quietly. Others like me. A new mission. The Academy's council gathered again to discuss the signal. After long talks, they agreed to support a new expedition, Project Dawn, a mission to follow the signal's path and search for surviving humans or colonies. When they asked who would lead it, Kale didn't hesitate. I will go, he said simply. Reeve flapped her wings excitedly. Then I'm going too. Someone has to make sure you don't get lost. Thrixa crossed his arms but smiled. And someone has to protect the hero of humanity. Even Loran joined in, nodding. I would like to study this new world. For science, Kale laughed softly. Then it seems we have a crew. The farewell. On the morning of departure, the Academy gathered to see them off. The ship, sleek, silver, and built for deep exploration, shimmered in the rising sun. Headmaster Voran stood before Kale. You've taught us something. Kale, you've reminded the galaxy that every species, no matter how small or forgotten, can shape the future. Kale bowed slightly. And you've taught me that the future is brighter when we face it together. Professor Iltara handed him a small metallic pendant, a symbol of the Academy. So you never forget where your journey restarted, she said. Kale took it with gratitude. Thank you, Professor, for believing in me before anyone else did. The journey into the unknown. The engines hummed as the ship lifted off, slowly rising above the Academy towers. The crowd waved as it disappeared into the clouds. Inside the cockpit, Ree cheered. To the stars. Thrixa grinned. Let's see if your people are as brave as you are. Kyle smiled. If they're out there, they'll be waiting. As the ship left Zerath Prime's orbit, the stars stretched into bright lines. Kale gazed out the window, eyes filled with wonder. Below him, the Academy grew smaller, but its light, and the light of what he had awakened, would never fade. The human spirit weeks turned into months as they traveled across distant systems. Along the way, Kale kept a journal, recording everything they saw. Nebulae glowing like oceans, planets with crystal skies, and abandoned stations whispering stories of the past. Everywhere they went, Kale shared Earth stories of art, laughter, and courage. Aliens who met him often said, "Humans sound strange." Kyle would smile. We were strange, but we cared deeply. That's what made us human. Each time they said goodbye, those aliens would repeat the word human, not as fear, but as hope. The signal's end finally, after many jumps through the void, the ship reached the coordinates from the signal. A small blue planet floated quietly before them. It wasn't Earth, but it looked like home. Oceans, clouds, and green lands. Loran's scanners beeped. There's a settlement. Small but active, Ree gasped. There are more humans? Kale felt his heart race. Let's find out. As they descended through the clouds, Kale could see lights below, a small colony filled with life. People looked up at the sky, pointing as the ship approached. For the first time in his life, Kale saw others who looked like him. Tears filled his eyes. They made it, he whispered. We made it. The legacy rekindled. When Kale stepped onto the New World's surface, the settlers surrounded him with astonished faces. Who are you? One of them asked. Kale smiled through tears. My name is Kale, and I come from the stars. They welcomed him warmly, eager to hear his story. When he told them that humanity had become a symbol of hope across the galaxy, they listened with pride and wonder. That night, as campfires glowed beneath a sky full of stars, Kale looked up and whispered, We're not extinct. We're just beginning again. Epilogue. The fire lives on. Years later, children at the Academy and on distant planets would learn about the human student of Zerath. They would read about how one boy's courage brought a forgotten name back to life. And on quiet nights, when the stars shone brightest, teachers would tell their students, remember Kale of Earth, the one who reminded the galaxy that hope never dies, because humanity's legacy was never in their power or their technology, It was in their spirit, the unbreakable belief that no matter how dark the